People still don't know the real reason. Maybe it's time I told them.
People still don't know the real reason? Maybe it's finally time someone said it out loud. You heard that right. MichaelJordan isn't just looking back. He's dropping the real story behind one of the coldest rivalries the league has ever seen. Today, I'm breaking down exactly why MJ never rocked with IsaiahThomas, from those playoff beatdowns that left Jordan laid out on the hardwood. We're talking about the walk-off that iced their relationship forever, the dream team situation that still hangs over Thomas like a cloud.
As soon as he steps in the paint, hit him.
And the moment Jordan used his influence to block him from a massive career chance. This wasn't some little argument. This ran deep, way deeper than people ever expected. If you really want to understand why Jordan never liked Thomas, you can't start with fake smiles or the dream team drama. You start with straight up toughness. You gotta rewind to those late 80s playoffs, where every drive felt like a war zone. Jordan was gliding down the lane, about to hit one of those crazy hang-in-the-air finishes that made him MJ, and then boom! Bill Laimbeer lowered his shoulder into Jordan's chest like he was making a football hit. Jordan crashed to the floor, the whole arena froze, but Detroit's bench, they were hyped like it was part of the game plan. And the wild part is, it actually was. This wasn't random at all. This was the famous Jordan rules in full effect. The moment MJ touched the paint, they were told to hit him. Detroit literally built a defensive playbook for one man, and the instructions couldn't be more clear. Hit him again, and if he gets back up, hit him even harder.
Well, that's the Jordan rules, and it was that simple.
What happens when he does make it this time?
That's when Laimbeer and Mahorn would go up and knock him down to the ground.
Years later, former Pistons assistant Brendan Malone even admitted it himself, saying that's exactly what the Jordan rules were. Simple, cold, and physical. They weren't just trying to slow Jordan down. They were trying to break him in every way possible. Mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it took to shake him. And this is where Thomas steps in. He wasn't some innocent guy watching from the corner while his squad went wild. He was the face of that whole Pistons crew, the hometown Chicago kid who grew up to run the bad boys like a general.
And you, as a defender, your job is to take away his right hand.
To Thomas, those hits weren't dirty at all. To him, that was just smart basketball. And don't take my word for it, just look at what he said. Oh yeah, take out his right hand. That's how serious it was. Now put that next to Jordan's rise. MJ was the league's new superstar, the NBA's next big thing after Magic and Bird. His whole game was built on flash, dominance, and showtime moves that made crowds lose their minds. He wanted to embarrass you, then dunk on your big man just to make a statement. So imagine how disrespectful it felt when every time he drove to the rim, he got hit like he stepped into a wrestling ring. The league was promoting Jordan as the future, but Detroit was treating him like a crash test dummy. And right in the middle stood Thomas, smiling while his teammates threw elbows and body checks. That's where the real bitterness started bubbling, because this wasn't just about fouls, it was about power. Jordan saw himself as the next king of the NBA, the guy who would take the game worldwide. Meanwhile, Thomas felt like the overlooked underdog who already built something real in Detroit, only to watch the spotlight shift to this new flashy icon.
How would you describe the way you felt then and feel now about having been the bad boys?
And every year, those playoff battles got heavier because what came next wasn't basketball anymore. It turned into straight-up war. This was the war that stretched for years and became the biggest roadblock standing in front of Jordan's rise. By the late 80s, the Pistons already had their whole identity carved in stone. And it wasn't some nickname they slapped on for fun. They lived up to that bad boys label every single night with elbows, shoves, and straight-up intimidation that made players think twice before stepping into the paint. And nobody took more of that punishment than MichaelJordan. Look back at 1988 when Chicago and Detroit met. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, Jordan was putting up wild numbers. This man averaged 36.3 points, 7 rebounds, and 4.7 assists in that series, going off every night. But from the jump, Detroit showed their plan. They swarmed him, slammed into him, and gave him a reminder of exactly what was waiting in the lane.
Every time you go to the fucking basket, put him on the ground. When he comes to the basket, he ain't gonna dunk. we're going to hit you and you're going to be on the ground.
Jordan is still there.
We tried to physically hurt Michael.
And trust me, they weren't joking about any of it. Even Dennis Rodman later admitted what the Pistons were really doing. By 1989, this beef had moved way past competition. It turned into straight hostility. Chicago wasn't just some hungry young team anymore. Jordan had Scottie Pippen growing into a star, Horace Grant adding muscle inside, and suddenly the Bulls looked ready to take the East right out of Detroit's hands. That Eastern Conference Finals went all the way to 7 games, and in the middle of the chaos, Jordan delivered one of the coldest performances of his career. In Game 3, Jordan absolutely exploded for 46 points, tearing through double teams, slicing to the rim, hitting mid-range shots like nothing, and sending the arena into chaos. Chicago stole the game 99-97. And for a moment, it felt like the whole power structure was shifting. But Detroit still had their dirtiest weapon, the infamous Jordan rules. That 1989 series turned into a legit battlefield. Jordan would take off to the basket, and Lanebeer waited with a forearm like a nightclub bouncer. Rodman grabbed him out of the air. Every possession felt like a punishment.
Well, I think the crowd is cheering here for the Bulls right now, and the Pistons as they leave the court. I don't think they're cheering for the Bulls, but I think the greeting is for the Pistons as they are headed off.
And when everything came down to Game 7, fate twisted the knife once more. Scottie Pippen was crushed by a migraine, shooting 1 for 10 and barely able to see the hoop. Jordan was getting swarmed, trapped, pushed, hit, and still fighting until the final seconds, but Detroit took the win 93-74. The Pistons moved on, and Jordan walked off furious and embarrassed. And if you think Detroit felt any sympathy, not even close. Thomas and his crew brushed it off as toughness. To them, Chicago wasn't unlucky. They were just soft.
It was okay when Larry Bird exited. We never looked back and said, oh, they were poor sports, they were bad champions. We were actually grateful of the lessons that they had taught us along the way in terms of how to win.
Then came 1990, another Eastern Conference Finals, another shot at revenge. By now, Jordan wasn't even hiding how fed up he was. And the Pistons didn't care at all. Jordan still went crazy, averaging 32 points for the series. But this wasn't one man fighting 5 guys. This was one man going up against an entire system built to break him. And even then, Jordan kept coming back while Detroit's defense kept chipping at him like non-stop body shots in a heavyweight match. Game 7 came around and the ending stayed the same. The Pistons shut the door and punched another ticket to the finals.
They called me to ask me to play. Rob called me and said, Rob, I won't play with IsaiahThomas on the team. He assured me, he said, you know what? Chuck them one, Isaiah. So Isaiah's not going to be a part of the team.
At that point, the East felt like it was written in pure pain, and Detroit stood there as the gatekeepers. What made it even colder was the timing. The Celtics dynasty was fading, the Lakers were getting older, and the Pistons claimed the throne by dragging every opponent through the dirt. And everyone, including Jordan, knew the price you had to pay to even compete. So by the time 1991 arrived, this wasn't some regular rematch. This was chapter 4 of a grudge filled with pain, humiliation, and payback. Stay ready, because this is where the story goes wild. When Chicago finally flipped the whole script, Detroit didn't just lose, they embarrassed themselves. By 1991, the Bulls weren't knocking anymore. They kicked the entire door off the hinges. Chicago didn't just beat the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. They swept them clean. 4 straight games. No migraines. No excuses. No more Jordan rules holding him back.
Oh, I hated him. And yeah, he carries even to this day.
This time, the Bulls were the ones who came in physical, relentless, and hungry, while the Pistons looked tired, old, and out of ideas. Game after game, Jordan sliced them apart. He averaged nearly 30 a night, but it wasn't just the scoring. It was the control. Whenever Detroit tried to bully him, he bounced right back. Whenever they collapsed on him, he found Pippen or Grant cutting through like knives. By the time Game 4 showed up, the Pistons weren't just losing. They were cracked, defeated, and done. And then came the moment. With time still on the clock, Thomas stood up from the bench, gave a tiny nod, and led his whole squad straight off the court without saying a word. No handshakes, no good game, no eye contact, nothing. Just a cold walk to the locker room like the Bulls didn't even exist. Bill Laimbeer followed him right away, Dennis Rodman too, and soon the entire crew ghosted Chicago on the biggest win of the Bulls' run. And if you thought beating the Pistons was the top of the story, not even close. This was the moment everything finally snapped. Jordan didn't just see bad sportsmanship, he saw a straight betrayal. And if you know anything about Jordan, you know exactly what the kind of moment does to him. Rivalries are supposed to get messy, sure, but this was on another level. Walking off without shaking hands is one of the biggest signs of disrespect in basketball, really in all sports. And the whole arena felt it instantly. Cameras caught Jordan's reaction right away. First, he looked shocked. Then the anger started boiling under the surface. The Pistons spent 3 straight years beating him down physically and mentally, and when he finally got past them, they couldn't even offer him the basic respect of a handshake. Years later, in The Last Dance, you could tell he still wasn't over it. The second they played the clip, you could see everything come back to him. He straight up called Thomas an asshole on camera. And that wasn't in 1991, not in the heat of the moment. That was in 2020, almost 30 years after everything happened. That's how deep that cut went. And the wild part, Thomas tried to explain it later, saying the Celtics had walked off on Detroit years before, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But you already know, that excuse didn't land with anybody. Let's keep it real. This wasn't tradition, not even close. This was pure bitterness, and everyone in the building felt it. That one moment froze their relationship forever. Jordan went on to win titles, global fame, and the full throne of basketball. But when it came to Thomas, the respect gone for good. No matter how many times they crossed paths after that, the walk-off sat between them like a wound that never healed. And if you think that handshake snub was petty, wait till you hear about the Dream Team situation. Because in 1992, the United States built what many still call the greatest squad ever assembled, the Dream Team. MichaelJordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Patrick Ewing. The list was insane. It was basketball's version of the Avengers, and they didn't just win gold in Barcelona. They turned basketball into a worldwide obsession. Kids across the globe became NBA fans because of that team. But here's where it gets messy. On paper, one name should have been a guaranteed lock. Thomas. I mean, the guy had 2 rings, multiple All-Star appearances, a Finals MVP, and he led the only crew that knocked Jordan off his spot during his prime. On resume alone, he deserved that spot as much as anybody. But when the final roster came out, Thomas wasn't on it. His name didn't appear anywhere. To make it even wilder, Stockton made it, Clyde Drexler made it, and even Christian Lettner, a college player, made it. And Thomas, he was sitting at home watching from the couch while the biggest stage in basketball moved on without him. For years, the rumor stayed the same. People said MichaelJordan was the one behind it. The story always went like this. When Team USA started building that roster, Jordan made it crystal clear. If Thomas is in, I'm out. That was the line. And nobody on that committee was about to risk the Dream Team without MichaelJordan. Not when he was the reigning MVP, the final superstar, and the face of the entire basketball world. And the politics around it weren't hidden at all. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird both had their own history with Thomas, and not all of it was friendly. Back then, the NBA was way more personal than people think. Locker room tension, grudges, and respect carried as much weight as points and assists. Magic and Bird still made the team despite their issues, but when you combine Jordan's rising power with the cold shoulders from the other stars, it made the decision way easier for the committee to leave Thomas off. Just think about what that meant. This was the most legendary moment in basketball history, the type of spotlight that locks your name into greatness forever. Everyone who put on that jersey in 1992 got immortalized as part of the Dream Team. Except Thomas. For him, it wasn't just missing a tournament, it was like getting erased from one of the biggest pages in the sports storybook. And the impact didn't stop there. The fallout followed him across the rest of his career. Every documentary, every highlight package, every celebration of the Dream Team, all of it moved on without him. No matter what he accomplished with the Pistons, that snub left a permanent gap on his resume. And here's the crazy part. The debate never goes away. People still argue about Thomas, and not because of his game, because nobody doubts his talent. The conversation around Thomas is never about his talent. It's always about his relationships. People question whether he was too disliked, too toxic, too wrapped up in bad energy to stand beside the other stars as equals. And that's what really hits Thomas the hardest. It wasn't that he wasn't great enough, it's that his own peers shut him out while choosing to ride with Jordan instead. That snub was the coldest revenge of all. The Pistons kept Jordan from the finals for 3 straight years, mocked him, beat him down physically, and walked off the court without giving him a simple handshake. And once Jordan finally had the power, he used it in the iciest way possible. You think decades later the heat would cool off, right? Not even close. Jordan brought everything back into the spotlight years later. For a long time, the Bulls-Pistons beef lived in old stories. Older fans talked about it on radio shows. Younger fans barely cared. But in 2020, when the world shut down and ESPN dropped The Last Dance, the rivalry exploded again. Suddenly, the tension between Jordan and Thomas was everywhere, and it blew up like it was brand new. Jordan sat in front of that camera, glass of whiskey in hand, and he didn't hold anything back. He said it straight. No, we respected each other. No, it was just competition. Nothing like that. Jordan showed pure, raw bitterness, and you could feel how much those battles still lived inside him, even with 6 rings on his fingers. The documentary doubled down too. They highlighted the Pistons walk-off, the bumps, the hard fouls, and the famous Jordan rules. And because Jordan was the one telling the story, the whole narrative leaned his direction. To younger fans watching for the first time, Detroit came off like cartoon villains, just bad guys standing in the way of his airness. Thomas wasn't letting that slide. During the documentary's run, he jumped into interviews firing back, saying the whole thing was Jordan's version of history. He insisted the Pistons played the game exactly how that era demanded. Physical, tough, no free passes, and that Jordan and the Bulls only changed the story because they couldn't handle it until they got stronger. To Thomas, calling him some evil mastermind running dirty tricks wasn't just wrong, it was lazy storytelling. The real problem for Thomas was this. By 2020, the court of public opinion didn't belong to old school reporters or retired players anymore. It belonged to social media. And on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, the verdict hit instantly. For a whole new generation who never watched the Pistons play a single game, The Last Dance became the official version of history. Jordan was the hero, the Pistons were the villains, and Thomas got labeled as the bitter legend stuck on the wrong side of the story. But even with all that noise, he didn't fold. Every time someone brought up Jordan's comments, he doubled down. He reminded people what he accomplished, how the Pistons stopped Bird, Magic, and Jordan in their primes, and how his resume still speaks loud. And yeah, most fans weren't exactly lining up to defend him, but you gotta admit, it takes real courage to stand your ground when the most popular athlete on the planet just called you out on Netflix in front of millions. The Last Dance didn't just retell the beef, it revived it, put it in front of a new generation, and locked it in even deeper. Jordan still held that grudge, Thomas still felt disrespected, and fans ate it up like a brand new series dropping every week. But here's the wild part. Thomas never backed down from his side. After The Last Dance blasted Jordan's words everywhere, he knew staying quiet wasn't an option. He hit every show, every podcast, every interview, doing whatever he could to set the record straight. And one thing he kept repeating was this: he never denied Jordan's greatness, not once. Thomas said MJ was one of the best ever, no question. The respect for the game was real. What he didn't respect was the way the story kept being told with him as the permanent villain. For Thomas, the deepest wound wasn't even the walk-off or the playoff wars, it was the Dream Team snub. That single moment followed him for decades, and the pain wasn't just about missing a roster spot, it showed something bigger about how the NBA actually works. Politics, power, and influence were shaping the league just as much as talent. Nobody understood NBA politics better than Michael Jordan, because when you talk about MJ, it's never just about scoring, rings, or highlight reels. His influence went way beyond the court. By the early 90s, Jordan wasn't just the face of the league. He was the league. If Jordan wanted something, most of the time, it happened. So when you look at Thomas getting left off the dream team, it's tough not to see Jordan's power all over that moment. Basketball isn't always about stats or fairness. It's about perception, influence, and who the league wants in the spotlight. And in 1992, the NBA wanted the Jordan era shining front and center, not a reminder of the rough Detroit crew that once kept him down. And that blueprint never disappeared. Jump to the modern NBA, and you'll see someone like LeBron James moving pieces the same way. Who gets traded? Who signs? How the locker room flows. Stars with power shift the entire landscape. Jordan wasn't the first to pull strings, but he set the tone for how far a superstar's reach could go off the court. So yeah, Thomas being left out wasn't just personal beef. It was proof that NBA politics matter just as much as performance. And Jordan versus Thomas wasn't the only rivalry that shaped basketball history. It was just the nastiest one. The league has always been built on rivalries, and some of them shaped entire eras. Look at Kobe and Shaq in the early 2000s. That wasn't just basketball. That was full Hollywood energy. Two massive stars fighting over touches, spotlight, and respect. They still won 3 straight titles together, but by the end, their relationship was cracked beyond repair. Shaq got traded, Kobe rebuilt, and eventually they made peace. They even joked about it years later on camera. That's beef turning into real brotherhood. Then you got Jordan and Barkley. They used to be tight, 2 golf buddies clowning around off the court. But the moment Barkley publicly called out Jordan's front office skills, everything flipped. Mike cut him off instantly. No texts, no calls, just pure cold distance. And Barkley has even said he wishes they could fix it. That's the kind of beef that still has a shot at getting repaired. LeBron's had his own version too. His biggest tension wasn't with the player, it was with ownership. When he left Cleveland in 2010, Dan Gilbert fired off that infamous comic-style letter calling him a coward and promising the Cavs would win a title before LeBron ever did. Spoiler, that didn't happen. But here's the twist. LeBron still came back in 2014, delivered the city its first championship in 50 years, and turned one of the pettiest NBA fallouts into a redemption arc. That's usually the pattern with NBA feuds. Time, money, or championships eventually smooth things out. But Jordan and Thomas? Nah, this one was deeper than wins and losses. This was pride, legacy, and straight politics that never really faded away. Every time a new interview, clip, or documentary drops, the whole situation gets dragged right back into the spotlight. And honestly, very few beefs in sports have lasted this long or cut this deep. That's what makes the Jordan-Thomas rivalry different. It never cooled down. It never got fixed. It never turned into one of those "we laugh about it now" stories. This wasn't Shaq and Kobe hugging it out or LeBron making peace with Cleveland. This was personal from the start. Jordan held that grudge like it was another championship trophy. And even decades later, he's still carrying it with the same energy. So now I gotta ask, whose side you riding with? Team MJ or Team Thomas? Drop your take in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share because the next beef we break down might hit even crazier.